A nudist? How wonderful. You seem to be a lively spirit.
What? Oh. No, it's not what it looks like. You see, I have to do a walk of shame after stating a wrong release date for the next Province Cyrodiil expansion.
Very funny. Now put some clothes on.
Do my eyes deceive me? I'm not used to such lively company.
Someone with your good looks needs more clothing. Oh, you're naked. Spare me.
How free you are to venture in the nude.
So, Tamriel Rebuilt, if that's even your real name, one of the oldest ongoing modding projects in existence. It all begins in 2001. What a year. Wikipedia is launched, Russian space station Mir falls from orbit, 9/11 happens, the US invades Afghanistan. Bethesda makes an announcement that the upcoming Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind would contain only about 1/3 of the province it's named after. The massive reduction in scope frustrates many fans, but you know what? The game is supposed to come out with a construction set. We can do it ourselves, build our own Morrowind. A bunch of enthusiasts form a project called Rebuild Tamriel. The effort was spearheaded by someone named Ender. 2002. Switzerland joins the United Nations. A Predator drone is shot down by an Iraqi MiG-25. The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind is finally released. The construction set turned out to be just as powerful as advertised and somewhat easy to use. Rebuild Tamriel crew begins their work. This is one of the oldest snapshots of their original forum. Nobody knew what the hell they were doing. I noticed something strange. Where are the wheat farms for the bread, the kids, the pets, etc.? Idea of underwater civilizations. Idea. In Elder Scrolls 3, wouldn't it be cool if you didn't have to walk all the time so you could ride a horse or run? Info on Reich Parkeep for my mod. The Trade City Darkonis. Progress report. Too many towns. Way too many.
How interesting. Aren't you a sight?
That's disgusting. Dress yourself.
You look ridiculous. Cover yourself.
If there's an excuse to wear clothes, you're it.
Sundered Scar Marshland. Azura's coast is just across the channel, but this place is more akin to Bitter Coast, the region the Imperials dump you in when the game begins. A small fishing village of Ildrim is the only settlement in Sundered Scar. It feels weird seeing a Dunmer wear this outfit. It's like he's mocking a friend of mine. A lonely shack surrounded by water. Inside there is a Dunmer pearl hunter.
Keep moving, scum.
He politely asks us to leave. The glowing mushrooms are a natural source of illumination in the caves. This unholy creature looks like a mix between a platypus and a spider. Enjoy the nightmares. A hidden Daedric shrine. The House of Troubles is the Dunmer and before that Velothi term for 4 of the Daedra Lords. Mehrunes Dagon, Malakath, Molag Bal, and Sheogorath, the Prince of Madness, the bad Daedra, whose purpose is to test the resolve of mortals. This section of the mine has 3 gates with extremely hard locks. Behind the doors there is absolutely nothing. This place is very Shio. La Asta, the Golden Saint, servant of the Prince of Madness, says she would love to murder us, but her flaming sword lost its incandescence. If we want her to kill us, we should capture a soul of a fire Atronak, she says. So we do, and she kills us. Back when Morrowind was still somewhat hot off the presses, I remember talking to a friend of mine, who at the time I'm pretty sure didn't even play the game, but was nevertheless interested in its story and setting after reading about these things in gaming magazines, which is honestly not the worst way of getting into Morrowind. I explained to this person that the game comes with something called a construction set, and you can use it to make your own content. Back then, they weren't called mods, they were called plugins. So my friend thought about it for a second and then declared, I will never install one of them Morrowind plugins. Now that might seem like a strange hill to die on, but he had a point. Morrowind is a delicate thing. There is plenty of complexity and nuance in the way it portrays its fictional cultures. Morrowind can be a very, for lack of a better word, intimate experience. From my friend's point of view, it didn't seem appropriate to invite entities from the outside to take part. Back then, the modding culture was very different. It didn't really exist, for one. Morrowind and Neverwinter Nights were some of the first big RPGs released with sophisticated editor software. Prior to that, Fallout had a bunch of mods that added a quest or two, but that's it. One of my friends created a patch for Fallout Tactics that converted the single-player demo of the game to the multiplayer version. At the time, that was the single most impressive bit of modding I've ever seen. We had no way of knowing what the Morrowind community, or any modding community, is capable of. Coincidentally, this was also the year George Lucas' Attack of the Clones hit theaters. Anyone else seen the new Star Wars movie? I must say it indeed met my expectations. Not a bad thing that. Unfortunately, the movie wasn't too balanced. The first half is utterly boring because they stuffed almost all action scenes into the second half. So if you consider leaving the theater during the break, don't. Master Yoda forever! 2003. An Italian gang steals $100 million worth of diamonds from a Belgian vault. The US invades Iraq. Poland joins the EU. The hacker collective Anonymous is started on 4chan. Rebuilt Tamriel is renamed to Tamriel Rebuilt. At this stage, TR acts as an umbrella underneath which several teams are working on different sub-projects. One of these sub-projects, Silgrad Tower, rapidly grows in size and complexity. The mod was equal parts impressive and disappointing. Walking around the new expansive cities was fun for a while. We've never seen settlements this size in Morrowind before. But even on developer-published screenshots, it should be obvious that the project didn't conform to the same standards of quality as the original game. It was exactly what my friend said. It all felt very moddy. And what's up with all the statues? Silgrad Tower and Tamriel Rebuild would soon split over philosophical differences. The guild was contracted by the town guard to produce resist paralysis potions. The thing is, we don't have the resources. The ingredients required are not exactly uncommon, but the guild needs them in truly industrial quantities. So we travel to the farming community of Salem that's supposed to specialize in such things. But they don't grow the plants we need. Instead, we are provided directions to Bysandrion, an ancient stronghold of Endoril. The most elaborate greenhouse in Morrowind, or so they say. It's between here and Dalmalexia. Hlalu are not the only plantation owners in the province. I miss the mead halls of Karthwasten. Bysandrion, this is the place. Someone's private study. There are a number of these ancient Dunmer fortresses scattered all over the province. Most are abandoned by everyone except for Daedra and illegal cults. Interesting. A clever application of magical technology to create a roofed greenhouse. But the place doesn't have all the plants we need. Go east towards the coast, the man said. I still have the magical boots. The sorcerer class specializes in enchanting as one of the primary skills. Among other things, enchanting helps us use magical items more efficiently, preserving their charge.
I'm sure there's someone else you can bother.
Can I sleep in your house? A beautiful morning in the Vales. Let's see what's inside. The Daedra cultists have a little kitchen set up here. Azura is associated with mystery, fate, and prophecy. Eventually, we reach the coast, and here are the lilies. That was a trip. The problem with the flowers turned out to be that they are too common. Too common to have them in stock. Do you guys like ancient modern drama? In this old forum post, Quentin Fortune, one of developers of Silgrad, explained the nature of their ideological conflict with Tamriel Rebuilt. I think the biggest disagreement came over the question what lore means for the project. For most members of Silgrad, me included, lore had been a guideline, nothing more, but also nothing less. But the general view for TR became more and more that lore is, hard to say, kind of a holy book. I personally missed the creative part about that, and I personally, again, couldn't agree with the statement that the more rules you imply on the modder, the more creative he or she will become. And deep down at the bottom, all of the lore is made up by some ingenious game designers and could be changed every single moment. Just have a look at some of the explanations the developers made up to explain some of the logical flaws to see what I mean. That's what I call creative. Well, that really gets your noggin jogging, doesn't it? Makes you do a big think. I guess all lore is arbitrary. Most stories are ultimately fake. Video games are not real. You look at stuff rendered by a machine and interact with it through an input device. Really, if you played one video game, you played them all. Oh yes, Morrowind, yet another game where your eyes focus light and the resulting signal delivers information to your brain. Reflecting back on the old conflict, a veteran member of the TR team noticed that lore was really just a politically correct term for quality. Another thing that might have led to the split is the fact that Silgrad Tower has been a very popular mod in the community. It might be that the egos of some people have been hurt by that, or that they have been simply jealous and envious, especially since a lot of comments about Tamriel Rebuild went along the lines of ambitious but impossible. The treasure vault of the Ebon Tower has a problem with people breaking in. No, it's not that they managed to steal anything, but the thieves activated sophisticated magical traps and then clogged the corridors with their dead bodies. We fix a malfunctioning trap by removing the power crystal. Not the first time we're doing something like this. Let's see what they have here. Long Sword of Gold Wisdom. Not the most practical of enchantments. Half a set of adamantium armor, an ebony helmet and a golden dagger, bits of dragon scale and a katana, a Kaviri style, some silverware, gems, Imperial Templar armor. That thing is actually somewhat rare. The caretaker thanks us for deactivating the stuck trap.
Long live the king and justice, citizen.
I see you guys are patriots. That reminds me of a forum post I've read. Let's see. Quest or theme ideas? Here it is. The Patriots. I am starting work on an underground cave. The entrance is in the lower level of the shipwreck south of Seydanin. In the underground cavern is the lost Dunmer city of Atlantis, now restored, mostly, and used by the Patriots, a revolutionary anti-imperial faction. I am planning on having a long series of quests based around the sabotage of imperial workings and rising the Dunmer against their imperial rulers. I plan to have a large battle scene in the end when the Patriots will try and destroy the Imperial army and kick them out of Varnfell. I also plan on including some side quests that have no real correlation with the Patriots. You don't read many books if you think the Twin Towers is a gay porno. 2006. The year Pluto was demoted to a dwarf planet. Israelis invaded Lebanon. Saddam Hussein executed by hanging. March 2006 saw the release of The Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion. The game receives near universal acclaim from critics and becomes a commercial success. A local video game magazine I used to read back then triumphantly proclaimed on its pages that Oblivion was in fact so good. It proves that the medium of video games itself has finally reached artistic maturity. You know, like literature or poetry.
Please sit down.
Quentin was right about one thing. As crude as it was, Silgrad had one major advantage over TR. It was actually released and playable. In September, Tamriel Rebuild releases Map 1, Telvannis. The big day. Their first ever public release covered the northeastern regions of the Morrowind mainland, areas traditionally ruled by the enigmatic wizards of House Telvanni, now being the targets of Imperial expansion. Our next assignment is to transport a package from Tamriel Manor to the remote Tirannat Paris egg mine. It's more of a punishment than an assignment. The guild relegated us to courier work. A Khajiit guard. The local lord is uncharacteristically forward-looking. Don't take it personally, but your outfit is very stupid. It's a toy guar? That's cool.
I suppose it is my duty to help those less fortunate than myself.
Good mindset. The package we're transporting contains a book with instructions on how to cast a certain restoration spell that would be useful to the miners. I'm not sure if the miners are even capable of casting such a spell. The wizard seems out of touch, but that's none of my business. The entrance to the mine is somewhere on the edge of the Mephalan Vales. Gonna be a long trip. These spider creatures are called Drydria, independent and somewhat unreliable Daedric servants of Mephala, Mehrunes Dagon, and Sheogorath. While traversing the Vales, we stumble upon a lair of these creatures. The matriarch can kill us in 1 or 2 hits. It's a hard battle. I had to summon a Dremora and use a number of protective spells. Eventually, we succeeded killing the creature. Perhaps I should tell someone in Nakamura we cleaned up the lair. Maybe this will help salvage the guild's reputation. A Daedric shrine. It's getting late. We need a place to sleep. Mehrunes Dagon, Prince of Ambition, Lord of Blood and Flames. We are ambushed by a Bosmer archer with an interesting enchantment. The Telvanni Mudcrab armor is enhanced with both a fire shield and a frost shield. Together they produce this interesting visual effect. But the spell is weak and mostly harmless. In fact, it only makes you easier to spot from a distance. We loot their little camp. Look at this. Aena's sickle? I've never seen such a tool before. The reason we're finding all this strange equipment is because this part of the Vales is a border between the territory of House Endoril and more wizardry-oriented Great House Telvanni. They are not friends. Silen is such a peaceful little place. There are barely any guards, no walls. We spend the night at a local inn. If the directions the Altmer gave us are correct, this road will eventually lead us to the egg mine. And here it is. The miner thanks us, says the book is a little beyond his level, but he'll figure something out. Back in Nakamura, the guild officer provides us with a pair of instruments to fix our shoes, no doubt damaged from all the walking we had to do. I tell the captain of the guard that we killed the Drydria matriarch. She's impressed, paid us a bounty. Hopefully this means we are no longer the laughingstock of Nakamura. 2007. Steve Jobs introduces the original iPhone. The orange box hits the shelves. Oblivion is very popular. Many modders lose interest in Test 3 and move on to greener pastures, literally. 2008. Obama wins the presidential election. Satoshi Nakamoto publishes his Bitcoin paper. Tamriel Rebuild releases Antediluvian Secrets.
Welcome, friend. Are you the one I've heard talk about?
Ranosa, the master wizard, wants us to interrogate a vampire. An isolated group of them is hiding in a nearby crypt. We are to ask them questions about the nature of vampirism she wrote down for us. It's best we do not fight or destroy the vampires, so that they may be studied in the future. Since the creatures are hostile, our guildmates equip us with special scrolls to calm them down. We have a limited supply of those. This is the crypt. And these are the questions. Just some academic stuff. What bloodline do you belong to? Do you have a connection to Cold Harbor? What are your relations with creatures from Daedric Plains? I use the invisibility spell to sneak past the vampires and make my way to their leader. The charm scroll raises her disposition just high enough for the vampire to not immediately attack us, but every question we ask lowers the disposition a little bit, so we have a limited number of attempts. Once the interview is concluded, the creature asks us to kill her. She doesn't like being a vampire, as it turns out. But that wasn't a part of the job description. 2009. The president of Madagascar is overthrown in a coup. North Korea conducts a successful nuclear test. Avatar is shown in theaters, shattering box office records. At this point, Tamriel Rebuild has people working on both Morrowind and Oblivion projects in parallel. There are plans to create Hammerfell in Oblivion's engine. which is not the worst idea. Oblivion's bright and cartoony color scheme might actually work well for a desert environment. On February 5th, Tamriel Rebuilt releases the island of Sturk for Oblivion. That is not the Morrowind Sturk I've covered on this channel previously, which is confusing. Why does everyone keep making Sturks? Is this like a rite of passage? Soon, the developers realized that focusing on two different games is a bad idea, and the support for the Oblivion project was dropped. Sturk is still available on Nexus. The mod even has its own UESP page. There are quite a few quests and places to explore. Cool scenes. What, in your opinion, are the best scenes you have ever seen in a movie or game? Not a serious threat, just to break the monotony. In Phantom Menace, where they lock up Obi-Wan and his master Qui-Gon and fill the room with gas, after some time they open the doors. A big group of androids is waiting outside to bless the remains, and all are wondering what happened. Are they dead? As the gas fills the room, there is no visibility. Some critical moments pass, and then the answer to our prayers comes in the form of two familiar columns of light rising into existence from inside the gas-filled chamber. Anders' last forum login was in 2009. Morrowind was out for 7 years. He became an adult and I guess he moved on.
We lost the transmission, sir.
But Ender wasn't the only one who did. The Morrowind modding community as a whole was dying down. Fallout 3 was released not long ago. That grabbed a bunch of people's attention. The talent pool was shrinking in size. Tamriel Rebuilt was still being worked on, but the development progressed at a snail's pace. I thought these roadside shrines were an Endoril thing, but here is one in Hlalu territory.
You are not welcome in Almasthir, scum.
Whatever, this place is dead. The chapel settlements serve primarily an administrative purpose. They host a local lord, their posse of warriors, and miscellaneous bureaucrats. Morak Tong, a Dunmer assassin guild, has an office in Raw Deer. Above all else, the Endoril are about laws, pacts, and oaths. The legal information is carefully catalogued and preserved. The office of a judge is protected by a sophisticated lock and a trap. We break in to discover even more catalogued legalistic gibberish inside. One of the servants washing clothes in the lake. It's rare to see a person of lower class in Raw Deer. A political map of the region. The territories under the imperial influence are marked in red. Yellow are the Hlalu lands. Teal, the Endoril. Affection for music is a quality the Endoril share with a certain other house. 2011. Bin Laden killed by the US Special Forces. North Korean leader dies of a stroke. A new Bethesda title is out. The Elder Scrolls Skyrim was the first video game ever made. Interesting that many mechanical and stylistical features of the previous entry were rather unapologetically discarded. The Shrek aesthetic was gone. Skyrim quickly became very popular and was eventually ported to many apparati. The mod creators are very enthusiastic about this new release. 2013. Snowden leaks a bunch of Spook's secrets and then flees to Russia. Ukrainians take it to the streets, protesting the government's decision to abandon the European integration. Meanwhile, the Skyrim modding community flourishes. Several ambitious teams of modders decide to coordinate their efforts, forming Beyond Skyrim, the roots of the project going all the way to Silgrad Tower. In June 6th, Tamriel Rebuilt releases Sacred East, the third big installment. The expansion focused on the easternmost region of the Morrowind mainland. A rugged coast and rocky ridges surround the sparsely vegetated land that hosts Necrom, the city of the dead, an ancient Dunmer holy place with unique architecture.
Watch it. We'll have no trouble in the city above Necrom.
You know, one day... Oh, forget it. It's not worth it. Speaking of ancient cities, we discover an old Dunmer fortress hidden high up in the mountains, a rickety gate. Let's see what's inside. It's a scamp village. I can't say I was ready for this. Welcome to Tur Julan. Are you here to visit the ghosts of Andathril House? Asks Metna Viljan, the winged twilight. She and her sisters keep the scamps in line and the fires burning. As advertised, some of the Indoril are still around as ghosts. Turns out death doesn't cure their legalistic obsession. A Bone Lord holds court. Outside, Salnamet, the village smith, offers repair services. Most Daedra of Turjulan are friendly, but not all of them, as evidenced by the body of a dead adventurer here. The Ogrim is in charge of the local clan fairs. Gongrinat the Hunger is a cook, wants us to gather ingredients for a dish. He's not dead, he's just drunk. A Punavid communal cup. Drink from it to talk to the dead. Actually, you don't even need the cup in this place. We bring the required items to the cook. He says the dish requires one final ingredient. Let me guess, it's us, isn't it? Oh yes. We get his fork as a trophy. You stand at the threshold, says Xerhat Hitai. Turn around and walk away. Don't tell me what to do. The Daedra are immortal. If you slay Xerhat here, it's possible to meet him later on another quest in another world. 2014. Russia annexes the Crimean Peninsula. Bethesda Softworks publishes The Elder Scrolls Online to a mixed reception. Tamriel Rebuilt releases the Statement of Vision. The ideology of the project was changed in a subtle but important way. Previously, the team avoided making edits to the original content. That was the rule. But the problem with this approach is that Bethesda's own world building can be very uneven in quality. The worst offenders are probably the location names that were generated by an algorithm during the development of the original TES, The Elder Scrolls Arena. Info on Reich Parkeep? Or take the city of Mournhold, supposedly the most important city of Great House Indoril. In Bethesda's tribunal, the place didn't have a single member of the house walking its streets.
Mournhold, city of light, city of magic.
Here is a philosophical question. Is Tamriel Rebuilt lore-friendly? Kind of? Morrowind was 12 years ago at that point. There have been a bunch of TES games since then, and they brought their own retcons and inconsistencies, but it's fair to say that TR's vision of the game world is true to the one expressed in Morrowind, Redguard, and Battlespire. You know, it's cool that TES is basically a Planescape-style universe of nearly infinite number of worlds and strange cultures, but the only ones we got to explore in official games were, let's see, a Diablo Hell, the Mad Gods dimension, which admittedly was very cool. Then there was an open-air dungeon filled with ghosts and low-effort fan service. And of course, who can forget our adventures in Hermamora's toilet dimension? Apocrypha, an endless library of black books where all forbidden knowledge can be found, haunted by the ghosts of mortals forever searching for secrets. What it actually ended up being is an extra-dimensional sewer level. It seems many people liked this content, but I just don't get it. Although Hermamora even kind of looks like he might live in a sewer. I guess it's not that weird, all things considered. The elite lorebeards of the Elden Scroll know that I'm not being entirely truthful in this conversation. We had all kinds of exotic Daedric adventures in Battlespire, which was very much an official TES game that took place on an Imperial military base. A starship of sorts, floating in the slipstream realm of Aetherius. From here, it was possible to access many different planes of oblivion. The installation was eventually invaded by the Prince of Ambition, Mehrunes Dagon. This is where the game's story began. The player character would explore the Battlespire, visit various realms, learn the true name of Mehrunes Dagon, and use it to banish the prince. You might remember this thing. Sword of the Moonreaver, the artifact we recovered from Melthatsul Don, is an item of immense power associated with Mehrunes. 2016. Pokemon Go is released, breaking numerous records. The Japanese company Funai manufactures the final video cassette recorder. Trump elected president. Tamriel Rebuilt and Project Tamriel create a shared asset repository called Tamriel Data. PT is a collection of collaborative modding projects working together to create, or you can say rebuild, all of Tamriel in Morrowind's engine. TR and PT are different but highly compatible sister projects that share many developers. 2017, North Korea tests an intercontinental ballistic missile. Beyond Skyrim releases Bruma for the Elder Scrolls V, and it turns out to be really good. The first public release is an important milestone for a province mod. There are a few major projects for Skyrim that still, a decade later, don't have a public release of any kind. Beyond Skyrim turned out to be an exception. The Nordic city of Bruma was recreated in detail, with dozens of NPCs, dungeons, secrets, numerous items to find, thousands of lines of new voiceovers. Once again, a fan expansion outdoes the official content in both scope and quality. 2018, Saudi Arabia allows women to drive. Todd teases the Elder Scrolls VI at E3. Nerds endlessly argue what province the game will take place in. I don't care. I don't care if it's High Rock, Hammerfell or Moldavia. Mr. Howard, sir, we'll buy your terrible game even if it's set in Breville. In July 2018, Tamriel Rebuilt releases Old Ebonheart expansion. A wealthy family paid us a large sum of money to find the remains of Constantinius, a warrior who died centuries ago somewhere in Morrowind. The search eventually leads us to a cave not far from the city. Inside, we find a scrap of journal paper. Constantinius and his companion stayed the night here, joined by a stranger. Their ultimate destination is unclear. The scholars at the Ebon Tower Library study the journal and determine that the companions must have journeyed to a Daedric shrine in the Sundered Scar region. And sure enough, inside we find another piece of an old journal. Sounds like the mysterious third companion was trying to set up Constantinius and his friend against one another. Our next destination is another ruin, and the quickest way to get there is through Akamora. There is a little temple-run sanctuary not far from the ruin.
Find someone else to bother.
The priests are as charming as ever. Dwemer ruins. Our first time exploring one of these, unless you count the exhibition we robbed. The Centurions are animated pieces of metal, and to no one's surprise, destruction magic works much better than hand-to-hand combat. And this is what we were looking for. The remains of Constantinius. And one of his companions, it looks like. A tattered note, betrayed by L. But I got L. Mission accomplished, I suppose. But who was the mysterious third companion? After doing some additional investigating, we find out that it was someone named Kamara, one of the most talented mages the Old Ebonheart Guild ever had. Prolific and humble, died ages ago. We find a copy of Kamara's unfinished work. It's about illusion magic, the frenzy spell specifically. Kamara used Constantinius and his associate as test subjects. Constantinius X joins the loot pile. When Grandmaster Jokathi returns from her meditations in the Velothi Mountains, she'll want to speak to us. But until then, there isn't any more work for us here. Time to move on. Is TR the oldest ongoing mod project? It might be. It's certainly one of the oldest. Statistically, around 1/3 of you watching this video should be younger than Tamriel Rebuilt. The nameless mod for Deus Ex was started on January 6, 2002 by Lawrence Laxdal. The latest patch was released in July 2020. Assuming the mod is still being worked on, it might be older than TR. OpenTTD, a fan-made enhancement of cult strategy game Transport Tycoon, started development in 2002 as well. The project is still being worked on. In fact, at the time of writing, OpenTTD had its first Steam release just a few days ago. 2019. India and Pakistan almost go to war. A major fire engulfs Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. The Hong Kong riots. Tamriel Rebuilt releases Antherin. While exploring the mainland region of Antherin, we meet this man. Horav Philippian is troubled, scared even. He tells us of the nearby town of Aimra. An unpleasant place. The locals don't like outlanders. The Dark Elves don't like foreigners in general, but these people are extra unpleasant.
Bothersome creature.
Uncharacteristically, a local tribunal temple priest is very helpful. His friend, a Dunmer named Jebin, went missing. Merely a boy by Dark Elf standards, Jebin had a good heart, but a troubled mind. Mentioned seeing or hearing impossible things when he was out on the lake. Had frequent nightmares of drowning. Jebin was a sailor. This was his ship. The captain is not helpful, doesn't like our questions.
Filthy sweat.
And the rest of the crew are not helpful either. The bottom deck doesn't look well maintained, but there doesn't seem to be anything illegal in here. The cargo hold is a restricted area. What are you doing here? Beating the crap out of a Bosmer, apparently. We search the body and discover this strange amulet. Or perhaps not very strange. After all, a water-breathing enchantment sounds like something that would be useful to a sailor. Can't explore the lake at night. We should get some sleep. But before we do, I climb on top of the lighthouse using a levitation spell. The trap door is barred from the other side. Not suspicious at all. I check the warehouse. Interesting, it seems to be accessible from the lake. Dava Arenim is the Indoril official managing the settlement. She seems to be relatively normal and even offers us some merc work. I decline. Not until we figure out what's going on with this place. You okay, old-timer? He asks us to buy him a drink and offers insight into the behavior of the Drew, a species of aquatic beast folk somewhat common in the northern parts of Tamriel. Many of them live here in the lake. We rest till morning. 2020, the COVID pandemic. Everyone's stuck in their homes. The Morrowind modding scene undergoes a small renaissance. Tamriel Rebuilt is being worked on by people of all ages, from teens to 40 and even 50-something-year-olds. Over the years, more than 200 individuals made their contributions to TR. Due to the nature of a volunteer project, developers come and go. There is still a small number of people from Ender's Time, but I was surprised by just how many Zoomers there are. Morrow Zoomers are a thing. You know, if not for the creepy locals, this Velothi-style port would have been a cozy place. Let's see what they're hiding underwater. A whole bunch of nothing, as it turns out. The Daedric ruin we saw on the horizon is uninhabited. Maroon's day gone. He never seemed to be a great benefactor of marine life.
So what do you want?
All I want is to solve this mystery, my friend. The innkeeper complains to us about an outlander who left without paying for his room. Horav Philippian. Wasn't it the person who warned us not to go to Aimra? Supposedly he's a scientist. Let's go find him, he can't be far. Horav is a scholar of the Drew, wrote a book about their life cycle. Drew are mostly mild-mannered, except during Karvinasim, their period of transformation. I interrogate the captain again. He suggests Jabin the sailor might have run away with his girlfriend Anara. She doesn't know where he is. Last time she saw him, he told of a nightmare he had. He was underwater, cold and dark. Shadows grabbed him, pulled him deeper, until he was consumed by a gigantic maw that opened below. Is that a throne? The old-timer tells us a story about the war, the Arnesian War, that was decades ago. The Dunmer were battling Argonians. It all started with a slave revolt. Many families down here in the south wanted additional security. They were Drew living in the lake. What if we make a deal with them? The temple wouldn't like that, but what if we don't tell anybody? Pay Drew a tribute and they'll protect us. Jabin wasn't the first one to go missing. The locals working for the Marvos family have a habit of just disappearing sometimes.
Whatever it is, I'm not interested.
I am very interested in you, Barandas Marvos. He says it's the priest. He must be behind it all, filling Jabin's head with nonsense. The priest, who is obviously innocent, tells us we can search his apartment if we want. I think I already know. Yeah. The man's dead. His lungs are full of water. An arm and a leg are missing. This suspicious-looking fellow was just squatting around the apartment building. He makes strange sounds and then runs away to the warehouse. He thinks he can drown us. He thinks we're trapped here with him. How did these morons manage to hide their little fish conspiracy for so long? The temple priests should have fished them out ages ago. Come to think of it, this was kind of what happened, since it was a plea of a tribunal priest animating our actions, who is nowhere to be found, not in his apartment, and the body is gone. The Guar man is gone as well. Yeah, the captain is obviously involved. I'll take that. We should talk to the local authorities. The hetman is not happy about any of this. Indoril hate when something happens to the priests. Not only does she support our investigation, she puts us in charge of Indoril's strike team, ready to storm the lighthouse and deal with the cultists. Nothing suspicious so far. Well, I stand corrected. Meet the lighthouse keeper. 2021. Joe Biden is inaugurated president. The number of COVID vaccinations exceeds 100 million worldwide. The team is busy working on the next big release. Dominions of Dust will focus on regions west of Old Ebonheart, the Armon Ashlands, the snowy Velothi Mountains, and the Hlalu lands of Roth Rorin. The region has never been heavily populated, and it has always been favored by people who want to be left alone. There is no set release date. Volunteer projects don't like release dates. The fact that we didn't have a new Elder Scrolls game for so long might end up being a blessing in disguise. As history shows, new releases tend to have a discouraging effect on existing mod projects. Now, the Morrowind community will be fine. In fact, the community might even benefit from increased awareness of the franchise the new release would inevitably bring. The Morrosphere needs more Zoomers. Morrow Boomer Carvinazim. The Skyrim community, on the other hand, I am not so sure. And I do want to experience more beyond Skyrim content other than Bruma. The visitors from the lake are waiting in the grotto beneath the lighthouse, says the keeper. Jabin killed himself, swam too deep, broke his neck. Sure, this hybridized creature ate some parts of him, but that was after the fact. Moving the Drew shield on the wall opens a secret door to the grotto. We beat the crap out of some cultists, robed members of the ship's crew it looks like, and that's the captain. We rescue the priest who is still alive but naked and ready to be fed to the Drew. 36 Lessons of Vivek, Sermon 28. The book tells of several instances when Vivek, one of the living gods of the Dunmer tribunal faith, battled a Drew called the Ruddy Man. When Vivek met the monster in battle again, he saw the remains of 3 villages dripping from its feet. He took on his giant form and slew the Ruddy Man by the way of the symbolic collage. Since he no longer trusted the Altmer of the Sea, Vivek gave the carapace of the monster to the devout and loyal mystics of the Number Room. He told them, "You may make of the Ruddy Man a philosopher's armor." The ending of the words is Alm CV. I love Kirkbride's writing. It's time for us to leave the grotto, and hopefully the town. The Indoril will stay behind and keep guard. But there is one mystery that remains unexplained. What about the hybrids? We met at least 2 of them. Is this a part of Drew Carvinassim? Whose throne that was? Jabin was an orphan. The old-timer says no one knew who the mother was. Come to think of it, he says, no one knew who the mother of the captain was either. What a strange motherless community. Oh yeah, and one last thing. We take the creature's claw as a trophy. Anjira will love this. The priest is back in his apartment. He is fine. Not really. He has been having nightmares. Keeps making strange sounds, hiccups. We direct him to the temple infirmary. And that's the end of this story. For now. The town of Aimra. What a shithole. So, will Tamriel Rebuilt ever be finished? Well, there is a real answer to this question, and there is a real answer. Truth is, yeah, it probably will be. It's hard to quantify exactly how complete the project is. Roughly 40% of the mainland is finished, as in with cities, NPCs, adventures, around 360 quests. But if you factor in all work in progress, all the modeling, landscaping, as well as organizational work, the project is more than halfway there, probably. However, the real answer is that it doesn't matter. Even if Tamriel Rebuilt would suddenly close tomorrow, it wouldn't really matter, as the project has already succeeded. This little piece of the mainland took me over 30 hours to explore. If you combine all the content from TR, Skyrim Home of the Nords, and Province Cyrodiil, the old game is now 3 times the size. Morrowind isn't as good as you remember, Boomer. It's much better. When will the project be finished? The TR website says the optimistic date is 2030. If you want for Tamriel to be rebuilt at a faster pace, consider joining the team. This is not a cult or a lifelong commitment. Individuals can contribute as much or as little as they want. I will never install one of the Morrowind plugins. You know, I didn't post all those forum snapshots to make fun of Ender. God knows if someone would dig up my old duck and cover posts, that would be embarrassing. And I really shouldn't be admitting this, but as a kid, I did kind of like Attack of the Clones. Come to think of it, Todd is like the George of the Elder Scrolls. Except, you know, without all the billions of dollars. He even eventually got bought by the Disney of software. It's like poetry. Just like the prequels, Oblivion and Fallout 3 turned out to be very different from the originals, obviously intended for a different audience, a much younger audience in case of Oblivion, the Jar Jar Binks of RPGs. And just like the prequels, Todd's games, both old and new, ended up providing bread for a generation of critics, and as a result, we understand the medium a little better now. It's Hegelian or some shit. Join me in 2 weeks or so when we'll be exploring another medium. This time a Fallout 2 total conversion, a portrayal of post-nuclear America by a bunch of Russians. So everyone has a pneumatic gun and alcoholism. (2025). The Elden Scrolls Skyrim 2 is finally released. The Thalmor Elves and the Empire are about to do battle over the Hoover Dam or whatever. The player explores an abandoned fort and finds a were gate in a hidden chamber below. Lost Imperial technology from the olden time when the Septim Empire was at its peak. The gate teleports us to the Battle Spire, which is now a derelict floating in Aetherius, populated by monsters and various hazards. Section by section, we activate the facility. The player has to explore Nevada or whatever the province the game takes place in, and gather materials, arcane items from abandoned Imperial installations, Dwemer ruins, Thalmor bases, etc. This is required to fully power up and awaken the derelict. The prisoner takes advantage of the Battle Spire's network of portals to make contact with various Daedric entities. We make deals and pacts with them. Eventually, when the central conflict intensifies, the Battle Spire dramatically appears in the skies above the two clashing armies, and all the choicing previously done is about to have its consequencing. The prisoner uses the powers of the fully operational construct, as well as their Daedric connections, to assist one of the armies. Will you support the Empire or the moderate faction of the Thalmor, who renounced their nationalistic elf supremacist ways? Thalmorism with a human face, so to speak. And of course, there is the third option, the Shio-Gorath option, who is this game's version of Yes Man. Shio knows what it's like to be in your shoes after all. It's like poetry, it rhymes. After the battle is won, the game continues indefinitely because the concept of the Battle Spire is infinitely monetizable with big and small DLCs. We can visit 40, 20 or even $5 worlds. There are 37,000 different Oblivion realms. However, the first DLC will have us travel to Sovngarde in order to rescue Ulfric, who renounced racism and became a public speaker and a life coach. And the second DLC will, of course, be in Solstheim. 2031. The Morrowind mainland is finally finished after 30 years of effort. Tamriel rebuilt. Team members switch full-time to working on Project Tamriel. 2032. New advanced AI-powered tools proliferate among game developers, drastically increasing their productivity. Skyrim, High Rock, Hammerfell, Elsewhere, and Cyrodiil are finished and fully playable. Looks like Tamriel will finally be rebuilt. 2035. A territorial dispute over the thawing Arctic leads the opposing military AIs to initiate a nuclear exchange. 99% of humanity dies in the subsequent apocalyptic war. 2107. The re-emerging human civilization discovers an ancient laptop that is still by some miracle in a functioning state. On the hard drive there is an older build of Project Tamriel and a construction set. 2112. The work on Project Tamriel resumes from a recovered version that is missing 80% of the content. Province Cyrodiil team begins work on Anvil. Skyrim, Home of the Nords, on the other hand, is almost complete. The only thing left to flesh out in the province is the easternmost region, the Velothi Mountains. And beyond these mountains lies the land of Morrowind. We don't really know what it looks like. These files didn't survive, unfortunately, but we have plenty of in-game fiction, items, clothes, little bits of lore here and there. And from all this, we can pierce together an intriguing picture. There are giant mushrooms and something called Vivek. Now, wouldn't it be cool if Morrowind was fully playable, to seamlessly travel from Anvil to Dragonstar to Reich Parkeep? I wonder what a Telvanni is. Sounds like an exotic dish. 2113. Rebuild Morrowind project begins.